when a poor, solitary rancher spotted two towering figures screaming inside a wall of fire. Every instinct told him to run. He ran the other way. By dawn, an entire tribe stood outside his door. Not with weapons, not with warnings, but with tears streaming down their faces. What this weathered, forgotten man did in those flames didn't just save two lives. It changed the course of an entire people forever. And nobody, not even he, saw what was coming next. The sky bled orange and crimson as the last light fell over the lonely ranch. Wind whispered through dry grass, carrying the faint, acrid smell of smoke. From the ridge, the rancher caught a flicker. A distant fire gnawing through the forested ravine. Flames hungrily licking the pines, embers spiraling like falling stars. Then he heard it. A scream, raw and piercing, cutting through the evening air. Two figures, towering even in the distant glow, were trapped amid the flames, their silhouettes twisting in terror. His heart clenched. He could stay safe on the familiar earth of his ranch, or he could run headlong into hell. His hands trembled on the reins. The sisters' cries grew ragged and desperate. He felt the heat even from 100 yards away, saw ash drifting like snowflakes onto his hat and coat. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet something stronger, stubborn and unyielding, propelled him forward. His boots pressed deliberately into the earth, each step carrying the gravity of a life-or-death decision. The world narrowed to that fiery ravine, to those desperate towering forms, to one unspoken question. Could he defy fate and save them? Smoke choked his lungs as he approached the inferno. Flames roared like a living thing, consuming everything in their path. The sisters clung to one another, their shadows elongated and distorted in the flickering firelight. His eyes searched desperately for a way through the wall of flame. Memories stirred, sharp and unwelcome. A sibling lost to fire years ago. A life shattered. A wound that never healed. The guilt that had shaped his solitary existence surged now, mixing with raw fear and adrenaline. He could not leave them. He would not. The sisters' eyes met his, wide with terror, faces streaked with soot and fear. He nodded once, a silent promise. Smoke stung his eyes, yet he saw with a clarity that came only when life and death hung in balance. Courage was no longer a choice. It was the only path. Into the inferno he stepped, carrying not just the hope of two lives but the weight of his own redemption. The fire's roar faded behind them as he led the sisters to the canyon's edge, acrid smoke giving way to golden dusk. Dust swirled around their boots, stirred by a wind whispering through long dry grasses. He paused, chest heaving, heat still scorching his skin, feeling the weight of silence that followed. Relief was fleeting. The memory of danger clung to him like soot. The ghosts of the past pressed close. Years ago, a similar fire had claimed his younger sibling, a scream etched forever in his mind. He had been powerless then, and that helplessness had burrowed into his bones, shaping a life of solitude and careful lonely days on the ranch. Now, staring at the towering sisters, he felt that old guilt twist in his chest. The sisters spoke little, breathing ragged, eyes wide with unspoken questions. He offered a steady hand, a calm that belied the churn of fear and regret within him. Each step forward was a step into his own reckoning, a quiet acknowledgement that some past wrongs could only be balanced by acts of unflinching courage in the present. He led them toward the small weathered cabin at the ranch's edge, where last rays of sunlight pooled against worn wooden planks. His mind replayed the memory of loss, the heat, the smoke, the helplessness of a child watching the world burn. The sisters, colossal and wary, noticed the scattered remnants of his life, tools, tack, scorched fence posts, and a subtle understanding passed between them. They were not ordinary women. There was pride, dignity, and quiet defiance in their posture, as if the fire had begun to reveal their unspoken strength. As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in amber and violet, a strange calm descended. The night ahead would demand more than survival. It would demand understanding, patience, and the courage to confront not only the shadows outside but the ghosts within. Smoke from the ravine still lingered on the wind as he guided the sisters toward the narrow canyon trail. Heat shimmered on the horizon, casting mirages over scorched earth. Each step was measured and deliberate, yet every crack of a branch made his pulse quicken. The sisters' towering forms moved with tense grace, muscles coiled, eyes wide with both fear and determination. The inferno had left its mark. Blackened trees, fallen limbs, and a stench clinging to the air like a warning. Yet amid the chaos, the rancher glimpsed fleeting hope in the sisters' eyes, a fragile trust flickering in the fading light. Ahead, a fallen charred tree barred the path. He paused, calculating the risk. His mind raced with strategies, every instinct sharpened by years of solitude and labor. There was no room for error. The canyon narrowed, flames dancing along edges of rock and underbrush. Sparks rained from the blackened canopy. The sisters' hands found his as he guided them over jagged rocks across unstable ground, their grip strong yet trembling with adrenaline. Each movement demanded precision, every pause a calculation between life and death. He glimpsed a break in the inferno, a narrow ledge leading toward a safer ridge. He directed the sisters wordlessly, their trust absolute, as if their bond had been forged in the very heat that sought to consume them. The smoke thinned as they climbed, embers swirling around their boots like sparks of hope. As they crested the ridge, the world beyond the fire stretched wide and open. The sisters exhaled, their towering forms silhouetted against the crimson sky. He felt the first true taste of relief. Yet even in that fragile triumph he knew, the danger was behind, but the journey had only begun. On the ridge overlooking the smoldering canyon, the rancher stood between the sisters and the inferno, chest heaving, eyes scanning the devastation. The sisters towered beside him, unarmed and vulnerable, yet their eyes were mirrors of unspoken resolve. His shadow stretched across the scorched earth, anchored by a determination older than fear itself. He stepped forward first, boots crunching on ash-strewn earth. The fire had claimed many things, yet it had not claimed his courage. He guided the sisters through falling embers, weaving around splintered timber. The ridge narrowed, a thin line between salvation and destruction. His calloused hands reached for theirs, guiding, urging, pulling. He realized that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the relentless choice to act even when every instinct screamed to flee. They reached a small clearing, a breath of space amid the chaos where the fire's roar softened to a hiss. The sisters sank briefly to their knees, exhaustion etched in every line of their towering forms, yet their eyes held quiet gratitude. He allowed himself a brief pause, the first since the blaze had claimed the canyon. Courage had been tested and proven, but he knew this was not the end, only the threshold of challenges yet to come. In the dim, smoky light of the clearing, the first secret emerged. One sister spoke in a low, steady voice despite exhaustion, revealing their lineage. They were daughters of the local chief, heirs to the weight of the tribe's ancient grudges and long-buried conflicts. The words hung between them like embers, warming the space with their revelation, yet carrying latent danger. The rancher felt the gravity of truth settle in his chest, heavier than any fire he had faced. The other sister stepped forward, revealing more stories of betrayals, alliances broken and forged in silence, the intricate tapestry of tribal politics now tethering them to a destiny far beyond their immediate peril. The rancher understood with sudden clarity that his choice to save them had not only altered their fate, but had entangled him irrevocably in the currents of their hidden world. Night crept across the clearing. The sisters, seated on a fallen log, continued sharing fragments of their world. The rituals, the codes, the unbreakable bonds of kinship guiding their actions. The rancher felt threads of connection weaving between them, fragile yet unyielding, binding him to a destiny he had not sought but could no longer evade. The sisters were more than survivors of fire. They were guardians of secrets, and he, by stepping into the blaze, had become a participant in their unfolding story. Thunder rumbled in the distance as word of the rancher's daring rescue spread, whispers traveling faster than any horse could carry. Unease rippled through surrounding tribes. Eyes watched from hidden ridges, and alliances shifted silently in the shadows. Rain began falling in thin sheets, mixing with lingering smoke, painting the canyon in streaks of gray and black. Every shadow whispered threats. He glimpsed movement on a distant ridge, rival factions, hostile and armed, closing in. The storm intensified, rain drumming on rock and earth, mirroring the rising tension. The sisters sensed his resolve and moved with synchrony, their towering forms blending into shadows, strength and alertness intertwined like threads of steel. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the canyon in stark electric clarity. The rivals halted briefly, armed men carrying the weight of tribal rivalry. The rancher felt focused intensity rather than fear. Together with the sisters, they were more than individuals, a single moving entity of purpose and survival. The rivals eventually retreated, regrouping in the darkness. In the quiet aftermath, the rancher understood that wisdom, vigilance, and unshakable resolve would now define everything that came next. The sun bled red across the horizon as they approached the village. Every step waited with anticipation. Word of the rescue had already reached the chief. This confrontation would test not only strength but the moral fiber that had guided the rancher thus far. The sisters walked beside him, towering and unyielding, their presence a living declaration that the fire had not broken them but forged them stronger. Ahead the chief awaited, flanked by advisors and rival figures, faces carved with the wisdom and suspicion of years. The rancher's heart beat steady though his mind raced. Every gesture, every pause, every glance could tip the delicate balance between honor and confrontation. The chief spoke first, his voice low but carrying the authority of generations. The rivals flinched, aware that every word weighed like a hammer on fragile alliances. The sisters projected power without a single gesture, their eyes holding the history of their tribe, the pain of betrayal, and the weight of survival. The rancher stepped forward, unarmed but resolute. Each word he offered was deliberate and measured, carrying the weight of deeds already proven. The rivals shifted uneasily, sensing this confrontation was not merely about fire or rescue. It was about honor, trust, and the unseen threads binding the tribe together. Then the chief's gaze softened. A subtle nod acknowledged bravery, judgment, and the invisible debt paid by the rancher's actions. In that silent recognition, the storm of rivalry began to dissipate, leaving only the raw, unspoken clarity of justice met with courage. Loyalties had been tested, respect earned, and the sisters' true influence made undeniable. Morning broke gently over the canyon, sunlight piercing through lingering mist, soft and golden. The world seemed to exhale. The rancher stood with the sisters on the ridge, the valley below bathed in pale light, dew glinting like scattered jewels on the grass. The chief approached, steps deliberate, gratitude radiating from his eyes, profound and unspoken. The sisters inclined their heads, acknowledging their father's arrival, yet their focus lingered on the rancher. The air vibrated with quiet reverence. Courage, honor, and loyalty being recognized through the simple truth of deeds performed rather than ceremony. The chief spoke softly, each word steeped in tradition and gratitude. He acknowledged the rancher's unflinching bravery, the courage that had risked life for others, and the bonds now strengthened between outsider and tribe. Morning light painted every face in gold. Relief and gratitude mingled with the remnants of tension, a delicate equilibrium existing only where respect and honor had been truly earned. The rancher looked at the sisters, their faces streaked with the memory of fire yet serene now, and felt the culmination of the journey in piercing clarity. Bravery is never solitary, and honor is never given lightly. The dawn of honor had arrived, and with it the promise of trust, alliance, and a future tempered by courage and moral clarity. The plains stretched endless beneath the afternoon sun, golden waves of tall grass bending like a restless sea. The rancher walked among them, the tension of fire and conflict now replaced by quiet reflective calm. Memories of past mistakes returned but no longer carried the same weight. Each step forward felt lighter, guided by the knowledge that courage and compassion had reshaped not only his destiny, but the lives of those he had saved. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying faint echoes of the tribe's laughter and gratitude rippling across the plains. The sisters shared glances with him, unspoken acknowledgement that survival had forged a bond beyond words. He paused on a gentle rise, looking back toward the canyon that had been their crucible, feeling the weight of reflection settle comfortably in his chest. Past guilt, pain, and regret had been met not with punishment, but with the redemption found in selfless action. He guided the sisters to a shaded glade where a small stream carved silver through the golden landscape. He watched them kneel to drink, their reflection in the rippling surface a symbol of resilience and quiet triumph. He felt his own past fading further, replaced by the gentle understanding that redemption was not given in grand gestures but in the consistent courage to face what must be faced. The sisters turned to him, eyes soft with respect and gratitude. He returned the look, understanding fully that the path they had shared had reshaped them all. Every trial faced together had forged an invisible bond stronger than any chain, transcending fire, storm, and rivalry alike. Twilight draped the plains in violet and gold as the rancher stood apart watching the tribe move with quiet purpose through the fading light. Night fell slowly, stars piercing the velvet sky. He remained on the ridge, the sisters standing at his side, their towering forms outlined against the fading horizon, guardians of both heritage and newfound trust. The cool night air carried the scent of earth, of distant fires now extinguished, and of the quiet, enduring promise of community. He realized that true heroism was measured not in accolades or recognition, but in choices made when stakes were highest, when fear pressed hardest, when the weight of consequence could bend the heart toward cowardice or elevate it toward grace. The plains lay quiet and expansive beneath a tapestry of stars, affirming the truth he had learned. Selfless bravery, however fleeting, leaves echoes that endure far beyond the moment, shaping destinies unseen. Redemption is not earned in isolation. It is forged through acts of daring compassion. The fire that once threatened destruction had become the crucible of his destiny, reminding all who witness it that courage can reshape lives and echo across generations.